So are you going out this morning? Are you? Right. Let me just set this up. Yeah, I should have took that in there, shouldn't I? Hang on. I'm back. Don't we have a mighty God, an amazing God, who challenges us at times? Oh, can't get this to work. And I was enjoying the worship this morning, and sometimes there are different things that speak out to us, aren't there? And we notice different words. In one of the songs, I think it was one of the last songs we sang, some of the words said, Jesus Christ, my King. And it's not about, well, it is about Jesus Christ, the King, but it's about Jesus Christ, my King, isn't it? It's personal. You know, for some bizarre reason, God loves me. I don't understand that, you know, and I don't deserve it. And I'm not speaking for you, I'm not speaking personally. But it is personal, isn't it? Jesus Christ is my King. And just imagine how fantastic is that? You know, Jesus could have called down armies of angels when he was suffering, when he was sacrificing himself, when he was giving his life up. At any point in time when he got a bit tired, he could have called down an army of angels. And that blows my mind. That was in a song I was listening to during the week, and it's incredible, isn't it? But all the same, this mighty, this powerful, this creator, this wonderful, this magnificent, this sinless, this perfect God loves me. Isn't that amazing? And just that song reminded us. So thank you for Ken for reminding us of that. It's personal, and it's individual. It's for me. Never mind you lot. It's this is for me, but you know it does mind you lot. It's for each one of us as individuals. So I was thinking again, you know, what do we share and what do we look at? And I was going along the lines of, we're privileged here, aren't we, in this particular country. We're privileged where we live. We're privileged with what we take for granted. There's so much. We're privileged with, for example, schools, food, traffic lights, emergency services, laughter, relationships, church freedom. Aren't we privileged? But we're privileged so much more to have this personal God, this God that loves us as individuals. And we have a relationship with him and he with us. We've all been called by God. Believe it or not, you've been called by God. You've been spoken to by God, even though you might want to have a rest. And that's why that we're here this morning. And one part of my thing is a challenge to all of us. Does God want more from us? Sometimes I think, I can't give any more because I'm tired. And I just want to have a time off, and I want to have time for me. But does God want more from us? From me or you? Are we asking God about it? Are we expecting God to ask more of us? Or are we just sat comfortably with no expectations of more? Are we open to God talking to us in one way or another and asking more of us? God's a great overcomer, isn't he? And he overcomes situations. We had and I know it might be getting a bit boring, but the situation in Malawi, and it's a place that we're becoming more involved in, and more interested in. And this week they've actually gone and purchased some land that has 3 buildings that they can use immediately on it. Has water and electricity already provided to it. But it came at a price. In Malawian kwacha, it was 10.5 million Malawian kwacha, which in our money is £10,500. But that's a significant sum. So the guy who this guy called William, who is representing the organisation we're involved with, Reaper Ministries, he's sorted all of this stuff out and the legalities, and it might be complicated here in the UK, but in some countries it's even more difficult, and there's more complexities, and because of the culture and the way some stuff is, it can be quite difficult. But he went to the bank with these guys that the Reaper Ministries was buying the land from, and he went to the counter and he said, "Can I have 10.5 million kwacha, please?" And they said, "No, you can't, because we ain't got it. You know, we don't carry that kind of money here in the bank." So he got in touch with myself and one or two others and said, "We've got a problem. Can't get the money." And we need to give them notice, and they need to, bring it into the bank so we can access it. And my answer to that was, well, I'm going to pray about it, William, and several others prayed about it as well. And God found a way. So, and it was a bit complicated and all that without going into the detail. But there was a way provided so he could get the money there and then and pay these guys who or the people that owned the land at that present time. So God is still involved, isn't he? He still gets involved in stuff, but he wants us to take some responsibility as well, doesn't he? And wants us to say, "Please, God, can you intervene?" Or, "Father God, we need your work." And we sang again this morning, "Our Father, have your way, your will be done." That was in that the Lord's Prayer hymn. And do we believe it? Sometimes, I struggle to believe it, or struggle to accept it or want it. And we sang, and it's one of my favourites. So Martha and I have the privilege of singing with a group called the Cousins, which is a bit old-fashioned, and we haven't done anything for some time. But we're sort of mainly involved with Methodist churches and going and supporting their special events and things. And that song, "Come to the Garden Alone," it says, "I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. He speaks, and the sound of his voice is so sweet. The birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gives to me within my heart is so ringing. And he walks with me, and he talks with me." Isn't it a privilege to be able to walk and talk with God, with Father God? And he tells me I am his own. He tells me that he loves me, Sheila. And he tells me he loves me, Mike, and he loves me, Martha, and he loves me, Shirley, and Sue, and everyone else. And he tells us that we are his own. And the joy we share, so that's me and him, we share a bit of joy as we tarry there, none other has ever known. God spoke at many times, and we can read many times in the Bible when he spoke. But God still speaks to us in various ways. And I shared with you something last week that God had spoken to me about, something unusual from my perspective. And when he does speak to us and when he does challenge us, it's up to us what we do with what he said, isn't it? He doesn't say, "I'm going to push you and poke you and prod you." But he says, this is what I'd like you to do, Mike, and etc. And many have been called, but not all have responded, either immediately or at all. So I thought, let's have a look in some of the callings that God gave in the Bible. And I know you know this stuff. I know you know it. But it's good to be reminded at times. It's good for me to remind myself. So Jonah, first of all, who had this great adventure in this bizarre fish animal. Was it a fish? Anyway, let's not go there. And it says in Jonah chapter 1, "The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me." But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. And you'll have to read the rest of that part of the story yourselves, when he ended up being cast out of the vessel, and this fish came and swallowed him up. Chapter 2 goes on to say, from inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, in my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead I called for help, and you listened to my cry. And it goes on in chapter 3. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you. Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord and went to Nineveh. So God doesn't just say, hey up Mike, this is what I want you to do. And then I say, oh, no thanks, and sort of run away, as it were. So there are times when God says, okay, well, if that's your decision, Mike, I'm going to respect that, but, it's not what I want from you. But he also has times where he chases us, doesn't he? And he causes us to come back to where he wants us to be and what he wants us to be doing. Gideon, what was his response? Judges 6 says, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Because the power of Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts. They hid away, caves and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza, and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep, nor cattle, nor donkeys. They came up with their livestock and their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count them or their camels. They invaded the land to ravage it. Midian so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. So it's only when they finally thought, we're going to ask for help here. And they cried out to the Lord. When the Israelites cried out to the Lord because of Midian, he sent them a prophet who said, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians, and I delivered you from the hand of all your oppressors. I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the gods of the Amorites in whose lands you live. But you've not listened to me. So he did reply. He had a word with them and said, no, what you're doing isn't quite right. And then the angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. So he was hiding what he was doing and trying to get away with it. And when the angel appeared to Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. And Gideon looked around and said, who are we talking to then? He said, pardon me, my Lord, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? So he was questioning back. Where are all these wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian. Isn't it easy to blame other things? It's not what I've done. It's not what we've done as a nation, as a people. It's, you haven't fulfilled your promises, God. And the Lord turned to him and said, go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? And then he said again, pardon me, my Lord, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. So so God had come along and said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior, in the first place. And Gideon had said, well, it's not me. I'm the least of the least, and it's not me. But the Lord answered, I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive. Gideon replied, if now I found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it is really you talking to me. Please do not go away until I come back and bring my offering and set it before you. And the Lord said, I will wait until you return. Isn't that amazing that God is patient with us, and that He's prepared to listen to us and to hear us, and that we can say, just help me check it out, God, and let me, and He's gracious enough to us. He doesn't come and make us, force us, but He's gracious with us. God chooses and uses each and every one of us. And I put down here, beware what you ask for, and if you decide not to listen to the answer. And God may insist that you do what He's calling you to do. So with Jonah and with Gideon, God wanted it. They were the particular guys. Whatever they thought of themselves, the fact that they ran away, that they didn't want to do it, that they questioned it, they were His chosen people, and the people He wanted to use for that particular, on that particular occasion. Let's have a look at some more. Esau. So what's Esau's story? He was the firstborn son in his family, and he should have been his father's heir, the one who would carry on the family name, and through whom God would fulfill His promise to Abraham. But Esau despised his birthright. And if you want to look that up, that's Genesis 25:34. And God passed over Esau because of his disregard, and found in his younger brother a willing heart. Jacob inherited the destiny that should have been Esau's by birth, and Jacob became one of Israel's greatest patriarchs. So be careful what you ask for, be careful what you deny, and be careful what God doesn't sometimes, and He does respect us, and He will say, okay, if that's the way you are, I'll move on. Eli and Samuel. So one or two more examples. Eli and Samuel. Eli was the high priest. His family had been called and anointed by God to serve Israel in the priestly office. So they had been recognized, and they had been called and anointed. But Eli's two sons had no regard for the Lord or His calling. So again, 1 Samuel 2:12, if you want to look that up. They desecrated the tabernacle, stole from the sacrificial offerings, and blasphemed God. They had a sense of entitlement and indispensability because they'd been born into a family of power and privilege. They were abusing what the family and what they'd been called to as a family. And it says, but God tore the priestly calling away from them and from Eli's family, and gave it to a young man named Samuel, who led the nation in their stead. One or two more. Saul and David. God chose Saul to be the first king of Israel, but he disobeyed the Lord and hardened his heart time and time again. Saul's children and grandchildren were destined to sit on the throne, but because of Saul's rebellion, God cut his family off and instead anointed a young man named David, through whose lineage the Messiah would eventually be born. 1 Samuel 16 verse 113, if you want to look at that. So some modern people. Here's somebody that I wonder if you've heard of this particular lady. A lady called Coleman. Has anyone heard of her? You have. There you go, eh? So, those of us that aren't quite sure, so who was she then? She was a healing evangelist who witnessed extraordinary miracles and inspired many others to follow in her footsteps. But Catherine said she was not God's first choice. She believed the Lord had called other people before her, but they'd been unwilling to obey. So when God calls us, if God gives us a prompt, if God gives you just something put something on your heart, or wakes, as He did with me the other week, wakes you up in the middle of the night, and something comes to mind, or you hear a voice, or some people have actually had the privilege of seeing Jesus and hearing, and I believe that's quite possible. But she said, I believe God's first choice for this ministry, so what she achieved, what she did, was a man. His second choice, 2. But no man was willing to pay the price. I was just naive enough to say, take nothing. So she said, I'm nothing, I'm nobody. But use it. And he's been doing that ever since. She believed that she received her mighty anointing and calling, not because she was the best, but because she was obedient. When God speaks to us, when he talks to us, when he says things to us, we have a choice. We do have a choice, and it's up to us. Are we going to be obedient or not? Here's somebody that I think we will all have heard of, a guy called Reinhard Bonkey. I think that's the right pronunciation of his surname. Bonkey? Yeah. Right, okay. He was really a mighty man of God and used amazingly in Africa and brought thousands of people to know the Lord through his work and what he did. And he recalls this time when God called him to Africa. And when God called him, he said to God, well, why are you picking me then? So why would he choose him for this weighty assignment? And God's response to Reinhard was that he was actually not God's first choice. He was choice number 3. So how about that? How about God telling you that? Hey up, Mike, I want you to do whatever. And I say to God, well, that's really good. Why are you picking me? Oh, I didn't really. There were 2 others in front of you, but they said no. So how about, do you want to do it then? But isn't it amazing? God doesn't give up. When he's got something that he wants to achieve, when he's got a purpose, a particular thing in mind, as it were, he will find somebody who will do it for him and who will work for him and go out for him. So it was choice number 3. The other 2 had declined. And when Reinhard was asked, will you do it? He responded positively and became an instrument in the Lord's hand. So, we need to, when God challenges us, when he asks us to do something, and there's lots of reasons why we might not want to do whatever it may be, and we may feel inadequate and all of that. But if God asks us, he's asking us for a reason, and because he wants us to do it. He wants you to be that person that does that thing. I'm just looked at Sue and I'm going to share a little bit, and this isn't what I had planned, but so Sue is running this group for you ladies called Flourish, and it's something that God laid on Sue's heart. Sue could have said no, that's not me, I don't want to do that, I don't want to look, but she said yes. And from what I hear, because I've never been to the ladies' meetings, but from what I hear, the ladies have an opportunity to share with each other, and you can share things that you might not want to share in front of guys or in front of your husband or whatever, but you can share it with each other, and you can encourage each other and be an encouragement. And isn't that amazing that Sue, sorry to pick on you, that Sue responded to what God was laying on her heart and said, yeah, whatever emotions, thoughts that she had, yeah, I'm not sure, but I'm going to go for it and go with it and do it. And that's amazing. So from me, Sue, thank you for all that you do. And for everyone else, we're all doing different things, aren't we? I said this morning about 3 wonderful young ladies who are heading up the Faith Chasers and teaching our young people. What an amazing responsibility, and what, just thank you for being willing to do that. So here's somebody else, Moses. And we heard about Moses, I think we heard about Moses last week, and he's been mentioned a few times more recently. First of all, something very important, you might not realise this, but Moses was one of the first people to have a motorbike. Did you know that? I can't remember the verse, and I didn't write it down, but it says in the Bible something along the lines of, the roar of Moses' triumph was heard throughout the land. For those of you that don't know, Triumph was a brand of motorbike. It still is. There you go. Yeah, it still is. Did you know that right at the start of his life, Moses should have been dead at least twice? But he wasn't. He was saved from out that. So let's just read a little bit about Moses' story. In Exodus 1, it says, from verse 15, the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, when you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, let her live. The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live? And the midwives answered Pharaoh, said, Hebrew women are a lot like Egyptian women. They're vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive. So they hadn't had opportunity to carry on. So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. When we respond, when we say, no, that's not quite right, I'm not going to do that, then God sees and he knows, and he can reward us. Not all the time, but he can do. But it goes on and says, then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people. So this was, if you're an Egyptian, you're part of that lot. You're a part of all of the people. And he said, every Hebrew boy that is born, you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. Isn't that awful to even think of? Horrendous. It goes on in Exodus 2. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. I don't know where she hid him. And was he quiet? I don't know. How did they keep him quiet? But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, so it wasn't quiet, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, so Moses' sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? So why didn't she say, this is one of the Hebrew babies, I'm going to chuck it in the Nile, like Dad said? Why didn't she do that? What was in her heart? Was God just intervening then? Yes, he must have been. And just saying to the daughter, look, this is a baby that I want you to look after and to bring up. But it doesn't, there are parts of the story. So God, if you're making any notes on the questions that Mike's got, that's one. I'd like to know why she did that. So his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? Yes, go, she said. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Isn't that lovely? That the baby's mum was still able to look after a baby. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you. Wow. There's a good turn up for the books, eh? So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, and I'm not sure what age, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. One day, so Moses should have been chucked in the Nile like the rest of the male babies were supposed to be. But Pharaoh's daughter didn't. One day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labour. So he'd been brought up by the Pharaoh's daughter, but he knew that he was a Hebrew and knew he was an Israelite, whatever term is suitable for you. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. It's a bizarre story, that bit, isn't it? The next day he went out and saw two Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" And the man said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing